Hello. I recently bought a little CNC machine and I've been trying to set it up. And because I'm leaving on vacation tomorrow, I want to try and get this motor to run for the first time so that when I come back, I can actually hook everything up and really get started on machining some stuff. So let's look at the mechanics a little bit. This is a very nice little machine. It has ball screws on all axes. It has linear rails. It's made from extruded aluminum and some actually cut aluminum plates. It's Beaver CNC. They are no longer produced. They were only produced for a very short while, I believe. I bought it secondhand, but the guy I bought it from, he never actually set up the electronics to work. So I got all these pieces, but they were not assembled and hooked up together. And I've got this nice little wooden box. My father helped me build this. We've got the power intake. There's also a little fuse in there and a little switch. This power is connected to our 48 volt power supply and also to our 12 volt power supply. The 12 volt is then hooked up to our controller board. This is a 6-pack CNC. They're open source. And our actual processor on there is an ESP32. So then we've got several breakup boards on there. The most important one for now is this little board that I'm centered on now. It's just hooking up some connectors of the ESP32 directly to these ports, basically. Because we're using this with an external stepper driver, this little guy here. So then we're hooking up the four lines there. We've also got this stepper driver hooked up to our 48 volt power supply. So this is where the power for the stepper drivers actually comes from. And then we've got the output cable sitting in this mess of cables. Let's connect to this output port. It's a nice little front panel. Came with it when I bought this machine. It's a 3D printed one. So this port is then connected to our motor. Let's see if we can get this to work. Okay, nothing's going up in smoke so far. That's a good sign. Nothing has blown up. Let's see if we actually can connect to our controller. That doesn't seem to work, which is no surprise since we lost Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi was disabled. This is no wonder then. Okay, we're connected to the Wi-Fi now. Let's try again. And there we have our interface. So the controller's up and running. That's good. Let's try and move the motor, shall we? I could hear the motor do something, but it's certainly not spinning. This is not good. Maybe I have to hold. Oh, okay, this doesn't work. I better turn this off now before anything goes up in smoke. Okay, let's try this again. I updated the microstepping of my stepper drivers from 64 microsteps to 4 microsteps, because 64, well, quite frankly, it's probably overkill, and also it might be the reason why this wasn't working. Okay, so let's refresh this page. If I figure out how to refresh a page. There we go. And let's see what happens now. It's not turning, but it's also not just canceling anything. Oh, it actually moved. So I further reduced the microstepping now to 2 instead of 64. When I reduced it to 4, I accidentally refreshed the configuration, so it updated to 64 again. So maybe that's why it didn't work. But now it's set to 2 anyway. Let's see what happens. It's back to not really doing anything. Well, that's a bummer. This could still be because of some configuration, which I think is most likely because I keep hearing the motor when I press any of these buttons. So it is getting some current. I could try putting up the current of these stepper drivers so that instead of, I think now I'm using 2.1 amps, I'm driving them with a little bit more because these motors are rated to 4 point something amps, 4.6 maybe. And but first I'm probably gonna look at the timing configurations a little bit. So I've now figured out what the problem was. It wasn't in fact the microstepping, although I've left it at 2 microsteps per step now. The problem was the enable-disable connection. I assume the like in my controller settings, I did not take into account that the enable signal is inverted. So it's actually enabled when there is no voltage on those pins. And it says in the user manual as well that this is usually just simply left unconnected. So always enabled. I figured, guess why not? So on this microstepper driver, I now just disabled the two enable-disable pins. You can see them hanging off of there. It's nice because it has a separate connector from the direction and the pulse pins. So now that I've disconnected it like this, I'll of course remove the cables at some point, but I have to reroute the cables anyway. We can have a look at the motor. So if we now tell it to move in the Y direction, because this is hooked up to a Y motor, it starts turning, which is amazing. This is exactly what I wanted, and it seems to be working well. And just judging by how much it rotates, let's see, if we tell it to move 1 centimeter, so 10 millimeters on this, which is the second button from the bottom, it should do exactly 1 revolution, I believe. Which is exactly what we see.